not what the inside of a castle would look like, right? We normally think that they're like dark and dingy and there's nothing going on, even if it's cool architecture. Well, let me introduce you to what they actually would have looked like. This is Castle Coch, something like that. Something like that in Wales, C-O-C-H, which has been re-renovated, and it would have looked something more like this. They would have been elaborately painted. Now, this depends on how rich you were if you owned a castle. The more simple areas or more simple castles would have been more of a lime wash. However, basically all of them that we can find, with few exceptions, were completely painted, and very elaborately so. Now, this is a renovation. This is a remade castle to try and make it look as close as possible. They did mess up in a few spots, because something like this, where it's just bare wood, probably it would have originally looked something more like this. Like, this is actually what all the furniture in the medieval times would have looked like. Very colorful. Like, this wardrobe right here is what you would have been dealing with. And even if you wanted to paint on brick shapes, they would paint them on. They wouldn't just leave them bare. The ceilings would have looked something more like this. Almost all of the historical evidence that we can find is stars were very common to paint onto the ceilings to make it seem like you are looking up at the night sky. I mean, look at some of how elaborate this work is right here. Little butterflies, some gold, all kinds of stuff like that. This would have been dependent, like I said, on how rich somebody was. The more simple, the less there would have been, but there still would have almost everything would have been painted. And so while most castles wouldn't have really had very many windows except for little tiny arrow slits, they would have still been a very colorful and fun experience, because that's how you showed off how rich you were at the time, was how ostentatious you could be. Back then, colors were expensive. Nowadays, they're very cheap. And so rich people, this isn't the way they show off.